Hello, I'm Sarah Schwartz, and I am here making this video for specifically my students this term. It's fall 2023 on how to set up your computer for my courses. This includes installing R Studio, and the R packages we'll potentially be using. My website, if you want to follow along, is sarahschwartzstats.com. I'll include it in the description box. And from there, under the teaching section, you can go to the Encyclopedia of Quantitative Methods in R, which is a set of ebooks I've been writing, very much under construction. And we're going to go to the volume link specifically on software. This has a overview of R and what it's used for, but right now we're going to go to section 2 on installing the software. Now, I'm on a Windows machine, so if you're on a Mac, it might work slightly different. But either way, first step is you need to go to r-project.org. Even if you already have R on your computer, you want the most recent version. When you go to the r-project.org, you'll want to, at the Getting Started section, click on where it says Download R. The second thing you'll need to click on or select is the mirror or server location from which you're going to download base R. And it's always a good idea to choose a server that's close to you in geographical region, although less so now that we're not on dial-up. I'm going to choose Oregon State since I'm in Utah. No matter which mirror you choose, the next screen will have you choosing to install what computer system you're going to be installing on. Most students in the class are on Mac or Windows. And again, I'm doing Windows. I will show for Mac. If you go to Mac, you have to then choose one of the latest releases. This is currently version 4.3.1 called Beagle Scouts, and it was released just over 2 months ago. So if your Apple computer has the Apple Silicon processor, an M1 or an M2, you're going to choose this first link. If you're using an older Intel processor Mac, you're going to choose the second link. That will download the installer and then install it like you would with anything else on a Mac. I'm going to show Windows. On the Windows screen, that you want to click on the first blue word that says base. We're going to get base R, and then click on the large text that says download R 4.3.1 for Windows. Now, I'm using the Chrome browser, so I have a little icon at the top that shows that I'm downloading, and it will show my progress. And when I'm done, it will put it in my downloads folder. When it's done, and it should be fairly fast depending on your internet connection, you can click on that file and it will start the installation. The first window that I'm seeing that you probably aren't is asking if I want to allow changes to my device. And yes, you do. And after this is what the setup looks like on Windows. Everything, we're going to go with the defaults. Just click next, next, next. Do not change anything. So I'm going to go with English, and then every screen I'm just going to say next, 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 next. Then the installer will actually download the base R files to store on my hard drive. And the location is in your program files, an R folder. We're just going to let it do the default. It works best if we don't mess with it. And then when it's done, it's finished. Now the R computer language is on my computer. And if you look closely on my home screen, I have this R with the gray circle oval behind it. If you click on that, it'll open the default R interface. And you can type into this and you can do things, but this is very archaic. We are never going to do this in our class. But this shows me that I do have R running on my machine. And I'm going to not save it. I'm just going to close it out. Instead of interacting with R directly with that really basic interface, we're going to now go and get the R Studio interface. And so if I go back to that encyclopedia, there we were, installing the software. So we've gotten R downloaded on the encyclopedia. These screenshots might be old. They're from, I believe, last semester. Now we're going to go down. The RStudio software interface is now the company that is used to be called RStudio as well. The company has several different software now, so they changed their name to Posit. So that might be something new if you've used RStudio before. If you try to go to RStudio's old website, it should redirect you to the new one, which is www.posit.co. So we're going to go there, and the screen looks different than it did in the screenshots on my encyclopedia. And so we are going to go in the upper right hand corner where it says download RStudio, click there, and then again further down the page, download RStudio. You don't need the commercial, you don't need the server, we're just getting the free RStudio. So the RStudio for desktop, free. It has 2 steps here on the screen. The first step says install R, which we've already done. So we're good there. Now we're going to do step 2. We're going to install RStudio. And it's already, in this case, recognize that I'm on a Windows machine. If you're on a Mac, it should say that. And it's going to download the installer. For Windows, that's an exe file, an executable file. So I'm going to click on that either in the downloads folder or on that quick view. And it should start the installation. Okay, and again, you probably can't see this, but it's asking if I want to allow changes, and I'm going to say yes. It's, oh, is this saying RStudio is running? Let me try that again. So I'm going to go in my downloads folder, find that RStudio exe file, allow changes. Okay, now I have my Windows installer for RStudio. Again, it's just like before, we're going to go with all the defaults. We're going to click next, next, install, and next. Don't change the file location or else it won't be able to find your packages and it'll cause problems down the line. So just wherever it wants to put things, let it put things. Just basic, next. This may or may not take a little bit more time than the last one, but both of these should be fairly quick. Now, when we downloaded base R, it comes with some basic functionality. Just like when you buy a new cell phone, you get some basic operating system software. There's a calendar app and there's a reminders app and email app. You might not be happy with the functionality that's on your default device from factory. So you would go to an app store to get more apps with maybe different or more enhanced functionality. Our base R that we've just stored on our hard drive has some basic functionality. But for a lot of the things we're going to do, we want more functionality. And instead of getting an app, we're going to get packages. Packages are basically zipped folders that have data sets, functions, help files for more functionality. So my RStudio is done. And the RStudio icon, you probably can't see it down here. It's a blue circle with a white R on it. And I'm going to start up RStudio. Now I tried to uninstall this before we started, so I'm going to hope this looks like yours does. Looking good? Oh, this probably looks different than your RStudio, and that's okay. I'm going to show you how, if you would like, to make your RStudio screen look like mine. And then we're going to go get our packages. So the way you do that on Windows is you go to Tools, and you're going to go to the very bottom and find Global Options. In a Mac, it used to be on a different, I think it was under the Windows word at the top. But find Global Options, and there are some global options we're going to change here to make it yours look like mine if you want to. So the first thing we're going to do is go to Appearance, and when you download RStudio for the first time, it's going to look all white with text on top of a white background. When you're looking at a computer for a long amount of time, that tends to strain your eyes. So I prefer a dark background with a bright text. And you can do this by changing your options here. I like to use the sky theme, and that's what's around the outside. I zoom in a little bit so that what I'm teaching, the text is not so tiny. You can choose a different font, or I'm not seeing this text rendering is new. Size of the font. Oh, help panel size. I'm going to increase that. That's a new one too. And then down here, the theme. You can check what it's going to look like by clicking on these. There's some new ones I'm noticing from the last time I downloaded. Mostly right now, my favorite is Cobalt. Now, each of these themes just color or highlight different parts of codes in a different way. I think you can create your own theme, but by and large, I'm going to use Cobalt because it's easier on my eyes for the coding that I'm doing. This is totally personal preference. You can have whatever you want. So that should get your color scheme to look like mine. And if I go back into that global options, the other thing that I change is the arrangement of my screen. So in our studio, there's usually three at least show up, but up to four panels on your screen. And the arrangement, I believe, when you first get it the first time is like this: the source file and then the console underneath on the left side. I prefer to move the console to the upper right-hand corner, and you do that by just doing the down arrow on that and selecting what you want to be there. I feel like this gives me a better use of the real estate of my screen. I don't like to waste screen. And so if you want your screen to look like mine, I'm going to have source and console on the top, the environment, and then the file where it starts files on the bottom. And you can further customize these, but I'm going to leave that there. Now, before we go on to installing the packages, I'm going to show a few other things in this global options. The first is you can have more than one version of R on your computer. And if you only have one version, this won't show up in RStudio, but once you have more than one version of R, under the General tab, it'll say the R version, and you can change and use an older version of R that's on your computer. This computer that I'm on right now has R 4.2.2, 4.3.0, and 4.3.1. And you can choose a specific or use a default. And I'm going to use the most recent, so I match you guys. The working directory, I usually don't set this. On Windows, I think it goes to documents. The restore, I think these are checked, that's fine. The workspace restore, that's fine to check. I would definitely change this. Under workspace, it says save workspace to r.r data on exit. I would say never. I think by default it says ask. You do not want to save the workspace when you leave R. And the reason is it can get cluttered. Oftentimes we're working on projects and we make a lot of changes, or we have more than one project going on at the same time. And this can leave ghost copies of data set, and it can wreak havoc and things don't function the way you think they should. So I would say never. The history, not so much. The rest of this, I don't care so much about. I don't think it will impact as much. The second screen, the code, there are some options I want to change on here. Most of these I'm going to not spend a lot of time on. You can play around if you want, but under code display, there are some things that I think are very, very helpful. And they're the three options at the very bottom. For syntax, highlighting our function calls, enabling preview of name and hexadecimal colors, and using rainbow parentheses. I don't know about this latest version, but in the past, these have not been selected by default, but I would check mark all of these options. And that's how I'm going to have my RStudio set up. Now, the divisions of the panels, you can click and drag to make certain parts of your screen take up more or less real estate. Under the console, the first thing you should see is which version you have. And okay, so this currently has an older version. So it told me that if I closed and then restarted, it would change to the latest version. So here I'm opening it again, and now I see I've got the latest version, Beagle Scouts. All right, so here we go. we have now installed R and RStudio. Now, the next thing we need to do is to increase our package library. So some of the terminology here is from olden day computers, and libraries are one of those words. Your libraries is your set of packages. So if you go down in the section of your screen that has files, plots, packages, help, viewer, presentation, you click on that middle tab for packages. This lists all the packages that are currently residing on your hard drive. And a lot of these came with base R. So these, okay, I think that this is all that comes in base R. You can see that there is a package called stats. I might have some extra ones here because of things I've installed on my computer before, but you'll notice that each of these libraries or packages has a box next to it. And some of these are open and some of them are check marked. The check mark means it's active in the environment right now. So R helps your computer run more efficiently by one, only downloading to your hard drive things that you choose. And then it also only makes things active in your memory as you also choose them. You have full choice. So right now we've got our basic packages. We need to click on the install button and we're going to install more packages. Now, there are a lot of places you can get packages. Anyone can write a package, but we are going to use packages that are stored on the CRAN repository. CRAN is Comprehensive R Archival Network. These have been vetted, they've been checked, they're safe, they're going to work. We're going to use those. And then this location, it says here, install to library. This should be the path. It are selected by default when you did the installation. So you want to leave that alone. And the check mark at the bottom says install dependencies. This is because sometimes one package relies on a different package. And so for the one you want to work, sometimes you have to get other ones that it works in conjunction with. So all we need now is on this blank long space to put the names of the packages we want, separated by spaces or commas. And if you go back to the encyclopedia that we're following, we've installed our software. We are not installing Tech anymore because Tech, we can now use the Tiny Tech package. We'll see that in a second. So now we're going to install the packages. So we are getting our packages from CRAN. It's the official repository. And for packages to be there, they have to pass certain tests. They have to not have errors. They need to be vetted and have help and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to install our packages. So again, in RStudio, we're going to click on that Packages tab, click on the button that says Install, and in this window that says Packages, we are going to copy and paste, because we don't want to type these all out, the names of the packages we need here. You only need to install the packages once per computer. It will leave those on your hard drive for future reference. And here in this bright red box, these are the names of all the packages you need for classes with me. And this is kind of a list that I've been building. These are the packages I think that should cover most of what you potentially will do. There will definitely be packages that you'll find that are very useful. I find them all the time, and you'll want to incorporate. But here's our good starter list. So you'll want to copy this list with Control-C, a shortcut, and paste this list into that blank line on your install packages. It'll be a long line, and install. Now, you'll see a lot of action going on in your console. So what's happening now is your computer's reaching out to that CRAN server through the mirror you selected, and it's downloading each one of these packages plus anything that it's dependent on. So here right now we're seeing really quickly it's downloading every single one of these zipped up packages. So that's the first thing, is it's going to download them all. The second thing it's going to do is it's going to unpack or unzip each of these packages and check to make sure that it doesn't think anything's wrong. And we have a big list here, so this will take a couple minutes potentially. So we're going to watch this and see what happens. Now, there are some things that can come up when you're installing this many packages. Sometimes it will ask you about, do you want to download them from the binaries? And if this happens, I don't know a lot about it, so I usually say sure. And you do that by, if it has a pop-up, you can click the yes button. Or on sometimes on, especially on Macs, you'll have to actually type the letter Y on your keyboard and hit enter. If that doesn't work, then go with no. It's not going to break anything. Okay, so now it's downloaded it. Now it's unpacking and checking each of those packages. Again, these are all the packages on that list, plus anything that those packages are dependent upon. It seems like a lot, but really in the grand scheme of things, this will take up less hard drive space than SAS, SPSS, Stata, any of those big box softwares. Now, again, you can do these one at a time, but let's just get it all out of the way very first. Now, if you have any issues, hangups, computer glitches out, something doesn't seem right, please, students of mine, reach out to me via email. We'll set up a time in person or Zoom, or maybe after class. I'd like to handle this sooner rather than later and figure it out. There's always one computer in every class that has a firewall or something setting that causes issues. We want to take care of this right at the first of the semester, so you can easily complete the assignments and this isn't a hang up for you. Now, what we're doing right now is we're downloading and installing the packages to live on our hard drive. Now, when we turn on RStudio, these aren't automatically all going to be available, or else it would take up a lot of RAM or active memory on your computer. So we'll learn that the first thing we do when we start a project, when we start writing some code or doing something in R, we have to check out of the library the packages that we want to utilize. And then those packages, they'll have a check mark on that list and they will be available to use. Now, the speed with downloading them depends on your internet connection. At this point, the unpacking and checking depends on the speed of your computer and what else is going on in the background. If you have virus software running in the background or email checking or anything like that that's using your CPU, that can cause this to be a little bit slower. But you should see action relatively frequently. Mine seems to be pause for a moment, and I'm not going to panic yet until I get an error or a warning message. Just going to let it think about it. It must have been a little moment where it had a lot going on. And now we're back to my computer's just rocking and rolling. And again, it seems like a lot, but this should do you probably for most of the things that you'll need for this class and beyond. Sometimes fun to look at the names of the packages. Statisticians have fun naming their packages, sometimes naming packages and functions both. So these names are definitely names that were on that list. So I'm guessing that the first ones were the dependent packages, and now we're on to the packages that were actually listed on that list in that red box on the encyclopedia. Okay. So now it says, see, again, it's talking about binaries. We've got some red text here, but it just seems to be telling me it's doing something. It's not giving me a warning or an error. It seems like this package, when it was installed, this labeling package is giving some extra information. But I'm done. The way I know my computer is done is this orange sideways caret or the greater than in math symbol. If it's sitting there, that means you're done. And you can test by typing like 1 + 1, any math. And if it actually gives you a solution, you know that your computer's done doing the installation. All right, so to check this, the easiest way to do a little check is to see if we can knit a document. Now, you'll notice in these little quadrants or sections of your screen, there are 2 boxes. There's a squish box and a big box. These are like buttons to make that part of your screen shrink or grow or take up all the room in that section. Now, I'm going to come over with my mouse and I'm going to come over in the upper left-hand corner, and there is a white piece of paper box with a green plus arrow. And that's for creating a new file. If I do the drop down, I get what kind of file I'm going to open. And we're going to do an R notebook. Click on R notebook. And it's going to ask if I want to install something. Now, anytime R in RStudio asks you, hey, you need this thing, you should install this thing, do it. So my message says, create R notebook requires an updated version of the markdown package. You want to install this? Always say yes, let it go. Let it install what it wants to install. Again, markdown is the way we type text to show how we want it to be formatted in our final document. Now, it's created what it's calling the Untitled 1 document. And this is our source code or our notebook code written in Markdown. At the top, we have a YAML header, which is 3 dashes to start and end it. This section of your document is always at the top, and it has to have at least a title and what kind of output you want to make. And by default, it says HTML document. I'm going to go to PDF document to test out to see if I can knit to PDF. So there's our heading. It has to at least have a title and an output type. Now, after that, this is like an example. If you're starting from scratch your own project, you'll probably just want to highlight and delete all this. But we're going to leave it here as a test. So we have a bunch of typing here, and we're going to just let it be, and we're going to try out knitting this document. Now, if this is the first time, the button up here has an R, letter R, on what's kind of like a notebook with a spiral binding, and it says preview. If you click down, we have some other options here. We're going to choose knit to PDF. And it's brought up another window because it can't knit first. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to save this document. And you can save it the way you save any file in any Windows or Microsoft program. On Windows, Control S or Command S on a Mac. Or we can go to File, Save As, and you're going to want to put your file somewhere, and you want to give it a name. I'm going to call this Test 1, and I'm going to leave it in my Documents folder. So now you'll see on the tab of the notebook, it now has the name Test 1 that I saved it as, and it's .rmd. This is actually a text file, which would usually get a txt extension, but we're specifying RMD. Still just a text file, just having the RMD extension, your computer knows if you double click on one of these files, it will open it in RStudio instead of just a traditional text editor. Okay, so now we're going to go, now that button used to say preview, but once I selected knit to PDF, it now becomes a knit button. Now that it has the yarn ball and the knitting needle, you don't have to do the drop down anymore. You can just click on this button, the knit button. So I'm clicking knit, and you'll see some things that are going on in your computer. Let me pull over here. Number one, on the section of your window that used to say console, if you looked closely, the other tab called render opened, and it gives you information there. It said it's processing the file called test1.rmd. And then it gives all the stuff in white. And this is just information that it's using the pandocs to move R markdown to regular markdown. And anyway, at the very end, it says output created test1.pdf. When you knit an R markdown document, it will create a PDF version, provided we said output PDF document. And the PDF document will have the same name as our notebook, but it will be now .pdf. So if I go into my documents folder, I have the test 1 RMD, but now I have test 1 PDF. And if I open up that test 1 PDF, it's going to open it up mine on Adobe. This is the PDF document that was created from the R Markdown document. So we have our title is centered in the middle at the top. Then we have some text. Notice that this is a gray background. It's kind of hard to see a gray background here where it says plot cars. And then we have this plot, not a great plot, but a plot nonetheless. We have some more text down here. Now I want us to look a little bit, the text. This text here where it says Control plus Shift plus Enter, notice that's italics. And then, let's see, is there any bold? There's no bold here, but we see italics on the preview and where it says Control Shift K and Insert Chunk, you see some italics code. So if we look back at our notebook, here is where it said Control Shift Enter, Insert Chunk. You'll notice this text is red when I'm using Cobalt. It'll be a different color if you chose a different theme. But the Markdown is using a single asterisk before and after to mark where we want the italics to be. The other thing is, here we have square braces, and then around parentheses, it says R Markdown, and then we have a web address. This is how you do a hyperlink in a PDF using Markdown. In the square braces, first you say what you want it to look like, and then around parentheses, you put where you want it to link to. So if I go back to our PDF, it says R Markdown here, and if I hover there, and we can click on it, and it will take us to that web location. And the last thing I want to point out is right here we have, this is called a code chunk. A chunk of code in the middle of all this text. Now you can create a code chunk or with either typing it or clicking a button, but either way, let's look at what it looks like. You can see it has a different background color, and the text markdown for it is a triple tick to start and end the chunk. And then in curly braces, we have the letter R. This tells the computer, triple tick, here comes some code. Curly braces say it's specifically R code. Now this tick is not the quote. The quote key on your keyboard is on the right-hand side by the enter key. Triple tick, this is a tick mark. It is a different key. You might not have ever noticed it. It's your keyboard up by the escape key. And this key on your keyboard has the tick mark, and you'll notice it's like diagonal one way. That same key, if you use shift, has we called it the tilde wave. And so we'll be using the tilde wave for other things in class. But triple tick, curly braces say it's R code. And then this is the R code, plot cars. Cars is a data set that's in base R. It just comes with it. Okay, so can come in here. Let's practice inserting a new chunk. Now you can type triple tick, curly brace, R, enter, triple tick to make your own code chunk. Or you can click this button at the top to create a code chunk. It's a green box and it has a white letter C and a plus. So this is add a code chunk, insert a code chunk. If you click the down arrow, you'll see at the add an R. But in our studio, you can also add Python code, C++, SQL, Stan, all different kinds of code. And I'll just show you, if I choose to do a Python chunk, notice I still have the triple ticks to start and end the chunk, but in the parentheses, instead of saying R, it says Python. So the computer knows what type of code it is. Okay. And for today, that's where we're going to end it off. If you can knit to PDF, you know you have everything set up correctly. And we'll see you soon. Please reach out to me if anything is not working, or you have any hangups, you don't think something looks right, email me, come to office hours, reach out. We want to get everyone's computers rolling right from day one.